So yeah, you can see the screen, right? So we were on the HTTP session. So yesterday we just created one part of the session, which is to set the session at first servlet, right? So today we will just move on to the second servlet and see how we can actually consume the session variable which you have set in the first servlet, right? So let us write the consumer client here. So let me take it as a string. So here from page 2 we are actually passing the username and password, and in servlet 1 you can see here that we are saving both the username and password in my session, right, using different keys as such, right? You can actually maintain the same key, that doesn't matter. And there is one thing here, if you set your session with some name, right, you cannot change that name. If you are changing that name anyway, which means you are creating a new token of session, right? That is very important to know. You cannot change. You can only change the value, which can be either object or anything in a session, right? Now here, let us just get those things. Now before getting, so what you have to create again is, you have to get the HTTP session class, which is under HTTP session.http, right? Let me call it as obj session is equal to, again we have to get it from request. Now this time we'll do one thing, we'll use this part. Now you can see here it says get session. So this true is something which is, this boolean part is something which is, if you don't give anything, right? So if there is no existing session, it will create a new session for you, right? If you make it true, it is same. By default, if you are using something called get session, right, like this, which you have used, it means that it will automatically create a session for you if there is not there. And if there is already session created, it will return that session for you, right? Two things. Now here, same way, if you don't want to create a new session, if you want to just access if there is a session or not, and if you don't want to create, then just give false here, right? It will take care of everything else, right? So that is the significance of the boolean part which we have, right? So this consumer, we are just interested on something. If there is a session, just give me, otherwise just don't create anything. That is what is this boolean part, the significance of this boolean part is, right? Now, so here you have user is equal to, now it's a straightforward now, which is session dot, we have something called get attribute, right? So just remember the key, whatever we have mentioned over here, CSR, take it as CSR user, and this attribute will give you, as I said, session is capable of saving object, right? So you can see that's what, like, whenever you say get attribute, right, get attribute will actually give you the object, right? And as we know that it's an so this is an string, you can just convert it to dot to string. We'll see how we can actually save an object, right? We'll see that. And we have something called string. Let me take it as password is equal to LMG session dot get attribute of, so we have something called password, which is PWD dot to string. So this is what we have, a user and a password. These are we get the user and password, I mean the session, these are who will read the session from the session which we have set in the previous resources, right? So now let me print those things here. Let me call it as response dot set content type of text or HTML, and just take a print writer here. So which is out is equal to, you have something called response, what you have to edit on response of get writer, right? So this will give us a print writer. Now here let me call it as out dot print. So let's take it as welcome, let us print the user here, right? Plus let's take a place here and let us print the password. right? So that we are actually reading the session. So here what we will say, we'll take this print right outside and just say here if there is an error, and just say out dot print of your message, and then we have to close the print writer and just say out dot close. Perfect. Now here so here we just say before actually coming into session, right, we just say something like out dot print of started reading session, right? Just something which we can understand from the token, right? So this is started reading from session, and we create a new thing and say this is second servlet, so that we can understand. This is second servlet started reading session, and we'll read that, and then we'll show what is actually gets called, right? And look, and if there is an error, we'll just get the error over here. So that is how we read the session, right? Using the get session paths. If your motive is just to read the session, just go for providing some boolean value over here. Or if you don't want to, just get it, right? If there is session, if you want to get that, or if you want to get a new session request, then you can go for direct thing, or you can also mention true here. Both are same, right? Either true or just give the same. Both are same. Now, let me just run this now. Let me start the server. You can see it is being started directly. It's fine. Let's go to the browser now, and let me just take this out. So here let me call it as page 2. We have clicked Servlets page 2. Now we have name. Let me give this name and password something, right? And click on go. Right, now you can see that in first servlet, there is in first servlet, right? So we have done that in yesterday. So we said whatever parameters we are getting in first servlet, right? We are just reading as a query string, if you remember, right? And the same query string we are printing as such, right? We said in first servlet and welcome so and so, and then we are setting something, right? That is what is being shown here, which is in first servlet and welcome, the username and the password, something, and we have something called link, right? Which is go. So this is, you can see, this is the first servlet which you have to do. Now here we are going to set the session, and we have saved these things here. Now you can see here the username and password keys are something which is like this, right? And you click on go. Now you can see if you go to second session, it has went to second servlet, and so what happened here? Is there a problem there? So it went to second. Let me copy this again. Okay, so when you click on this, it should go back to this part, and it should actually trigger over here. So it's a second, so let me restart my server here. Let me remove all. And you can see I can remove everything, whatever I had in my Tomcat, right? So if I go back to my Tomcat, let me stop this. If you want to deploy again, right click and just say add and remove. So we have servlets here, add and finish, right? So this will automatically add up everything. Let me clean this up and start the server. Right? So let's come back to this and just say page 2 here. Just give some name and some password. Click on go. Now you can see that yes, you have got username and password, and click on go here. Now you can see it didn't start it previously. Yeah, that was the problem. That's fine. Okay. Now you can see here that there is a second servlet started reading session, and you can see there is no corresponding nothing over here. We are just reading complete data in my second server, which is the same username and password. Right? So this is how you actually read and write the data. I mean, set and get the sessions which we have. Right? Now let's create one more servlet here, because we have to see whether it is being persisted across the across different servlets, right? Anyways, this will be same even in a JSP case. Right? Let me create a servlet again. Let me call it as request maybe 3. Right. Now here, let us create the same anchor element. So over here, let's call it as go to serve 3 maybe, right? So that we want to go to server 3, and let me give the name of server 3 over here, right? So let me give some break so that this will be visible in somewhere else, right? So that is what we have over here. And when I click on go to server 3, it will be going on to server 3. Now here what we have to do here is, again we have to read the data again. So let me just copy the same thing here, because this is something which whatever we are doing in servlet 2 we should be able to do in servlet 3. The main part is reading. So let me call it as, this is third servlet, started reading session. So we'll read the same session, you can see here, right? And it says welcome so and so user and so and so, and then we have anchor. So let us remove this anchor as of now. Okay? Simple thing what we have done here. Okay? Now let me restart the server here. Let me save this, clean, build, okay, and restart the server. Right, now let's go back here, just go back to some page 2. Now let me give some name here, something, right, and then you have a name and password. Click on go. And you can see that, right, we are on first servlet, welcome on this. Click on this, you can see that it is a second servlet and started reading session, and we have got the data. Click on servlet 3, you will get the same thing. Third, started reading session, the session is maintained across the different servlets, right? That is how the session will be maintained across everything, right? Now, the question here is, let us say in this session I want to remove something. How can I do that? So it is like, you can just say something called remove. You have something called remove attribute. Right? If you want to, now you are not removing your session, you are removing something called, or one of the attributes or one of the session tokens in this servlet. That's it. Let us say I'm just removing from this part. I don't want to show my password field to any. Right? That is what I want to do. So you can just say remove. And we also have one method called, let me just check that, which, oh sorry, it is in .NET, sorry, right, which is remove attribute. It will clear your this attribute actually, right? Now this is what we have, we have used it in third servlet, and here, so from this servlet we felt that from next servlet we don't need the password attribute to be sent, so I just want to pass on this user. So let us see whether it is being progressing or not. Let's create one more servlet here, which is, let us say it is servlet http servlet. We have servlet 4 here, right? So in this servlet, what I'm going to do here is again create an anchor field in third servlet, and just say this fourth servlet part here, just say go to servlet 4. So in servlet 3, what is the thing what I am doing, the new thing here is the reading of the session again is being done, and removal of one of the key token from session. That is what we are doing actually here, right? The new thing what we are doing. And when we go to servlet 4, you should be able to read only one thing called user and not the password. Let's see how it works, right? So let me just go back here and just say try catch. Let me copy some of the things here, which is, let me take this print writers, and yeah, let me take some part of this code, because there is something which we have seen already, right? Now we'll just say this is fourth servlet, right? Started reading session. Now you can see here, let me take both the things, which is user and password. We know that there is a user and we know that there is no password. So let us do something like, let us create a try catch here, because this may give us a null value, right? So I've taken it like this, right? What I'll do, I'll just take password outside this try catch and use this variable over here. What we are doing is we are just trying to get the password and into this. Now if this password, whatever we are getting, if there is an error, we'll just say password is equal to no session variable found, right? And then let us print the exception. So it may give us a null, right, which is e dot get message, right? So that is what we're actually printing here, right? We just read the user, and while reading password, what I'm doing here is, if there is no password field here, right? So I want to block it, or I want to show that there is no password field being done, or maybe if the person is actually sending the password across, then maybe you may also get the password field over here, right? That is what we are doing in my servlet 4, right? Now here in servlet 3, we are actually removing this attribute. That's what happened. Now let me just remove this part and restart my server so that I won't get any surprises again. Let me go back and just say issue. So here, let me do some name and password is, let us say something, right? And now let me click on go, right? So yeah, so we're going to the first servlet, right? And here's the details, click on go. Second servlet, same details, click on go. Now third servlet, again it got persisted. Now in this servlet, third servlet, we are removing the password tag. Let me click on this. Now you can see here, right? We are at fourth servlet, right? We said we are able to pass the SAM and we remove password field, right? That's why it says no session found and the value is null here. You can see that because it has thrown some error over here, because whenever you are reading, if you try to convert a null value into toString, it will actually throw an error, right? That's why it immediately went into the exception part and we got this part being printed, right? So that is how you can actually set, get and remove your session variables across all the resources. Now you can see we have gone through from page 2, right? We have gone through so many servlets, right? Around 4 servlets here, right? And you can see that whatever is being set at once, right? We are able to get all the things across all the servlets. This is same behavior even in our JSP. We will be writing the same code even in JSPs, right? Same thing. There won't be any change. So this class you can apply. Now way to write is something which you have to learn, which is a very interesting topic in JSP, right? We'll also learn that part, and whatever we are learning in servlets, you can actually write the complete servlet code, whatever we are doing in JSPs, right? So there is some way to write them. I'll just show you that when we come to JSPs, right? But this session part is here. You have to reapply the same things in your JSPs as such, right? So that is how we actually work with sessions, sending something called textual data across different servlets, and how to remove them and how to actually retain them and all. Right? So that is what it is. And then let me just check whether there is one method I just wanted to know. you have something called set max inactive interval, right? So this is something where you're actually setting like how much, like what is the time you want to actually make this session to be active, right? That is what it is actually. Now let me just show you this part. As if you see this part, it is not giving something. Okay, it is not giving. But anyways, this is something which you have to do seconds over here, right? Right. If you give some higher seconds, let us say 3006, 3600 maybe, right? Seconds, right? It will calculate accordingly, and it will make sure your inactive, like session timeout as such we say, right? It will maintain this time, right? Till this time your session will be active. Let us say if you are giving lesser time, right? You make it this time. These type of things you should actually, these type of things you should actually hold in at least one servlet, not across all the servlets, right? It should not be distributed. You should maintain this at one, and this thing should be configurable, right? Maybe you can keep this in session interval in your web.xml, if you remember. In my web.xml pertaining to this session, right? You can see there will be web.xml being created, configuration for my HTTP session 1. You can see there are so many servlets being created, under which you will be having something called HTTP server 1, right? Maybe here in this servlet tag you can create your own init param. I hope you remember these things, guys. If you have init param, maybe here you can just go for param name, just say max inactive time, right? Oops, max inactive time, and just say the value here as the same 3600, right? So that is what it is, right? It is something which you are actually setting it as this, right? Which is a max inactive time. And you can go back to servlet 1, right? And what you can do here is, so once you set these things, this is something which you have already seen this part, right? So here what I'll do, so I'll have to create servlet config, right? Let us say conf, right, is equal to, you have something called get servlet config. This will give the servlet config is something which will give us a configuration pertaining to that servlet. As we are in HTTP servlet server 1, that's why we are able to get that configuration, right? Now here let us say we have a string, let me call it as or I can take it as an int. Let us say int time is equal to conf dot get parameter, right? If you remember, we have to get init parameter, right? And the key. So the key here is max inactive time. So that is what you will get it here and push it here, right? So this basically will give us a string, right? So doesn't matter, just make it as integer. Just say integer dot parts int of this, right? So that it will be converted to int, and you can use this time over here. So this is how you should always go for setting everything into your web.xml. That is why we use this init param, right? And this init param should be, it can be in one subject or it can be in context param, right? You want to set this as a global, right? At that time maybe you can just go the same parameter as a global parameter, and if you want to make it as a global parameter, we know that we have to make a context param like this, right? So that it will be a global parameter as such. So wherever anyone wants to access that, they can access directly using your servlet, something called context. You have something called servlet context here, right? Context. They can use this part and they can actually read the data and set that, right? So this way you can actually work with servlets in order to pass on some textual data. Now let's move on to the same servlets part and let us see something called object creations, right? How we can actually send the objects. Now let me create one more servlet here. Servlet, let me call it as, oops, let me take one of the same name so that the name will be retained. Now let me call it as servlet here, let me call it as servlet 5 because we have already created 4. Let me create servlet 5 and finish. Now here, so what we'll do here is, let me create a class here, right? Because we want to get an object out of it, right? Let me say CLS HTTP session object class, some class, right? It's fine. I'm taking it bigger so that you can really understand that yes, we are going to create, right? Now this is my class. Now here we just do something like let us create some variables here. So let me just say public or private string. Let us take a string variables. Let me take it as let me take username, right? Let me take 22 values, username and ID, and let us say some other variable called something email, right? I'm just taking 3 different variables in this object, right? And let us create a getter setup for this. So I hope you know how to create a getter setup. Go to source, we have generate getters and setups, and here we have got all the variables whichever you have created. Now let us say select all. I want to select all, and for each I want to get both the getter and the setter for that. Let me click on OK. Now you can see we have got getter setter for all the variables we have. Get username, set username, get ID, set ID, everything. Right? Now these are simple class which we have created. Now let's go back to my HTTP servlet 5 here, and what we are going to do here is, let me just stop the server. Now in this, let me just copy this to my page 2. So from here what I am going to do here is, let us create a new page as such. We don't need page 2 now, because we just need a click so that we can go to servlet and we can store some value in an object, right? That's what we're going to do. So maybe I can use the same page, but that's okay. So there I can accept my text. Let me create a page 3. That's one. New HTML. Let's say page 3 here, and let me copy this form action so that we don't have to just save some time. And let us say here, perfect. So here, so what we want to do here is, we have a name field here. You have username, ID and email, right? Let us take the same thing. You have name here, so let us take some ID field, right? ID field here, so let me call it as text again, and name as ID again, something, right? And then let's take up one more element which is email, just email, right? Where let me give it as text and then ID. So this part as same here, perfect, right? So we're just building something where I can get email, ID and email, where I want to give the details in the page, right? And whenever I click on go, I want to set the same thing. I want to set this into something, let us say, right? So first thing, let us copy the servlet name HTTP servlet 5 and make it as the action of this one, right? Now let's go back here in servlet 5. Now here the big thing comes here. The first thing is, we have to read the query string. So let us do that part first. Let me create user is equal to, we have your request dot get parameter of your user. So let me call it as username here, and we have to map that username, right? And then we have string pass ID, right? ID is equal to request dot get parameter of your ID. We have got your ID. And then I have one more string which is email is equal to request dot get parameter of, I have something called email. So these are the 4 things which I've sent from a page: username, ID and email, and I've got them in my variables in my servlet. Now here, what we're going to do is first let us just show them what the values we have got. So let us just set here response or set content type something called text or HTML, and just say print writer out is equal to response dot get writer, and in my finally, so we'll just close the out. Okay. Now here, let us just say here as out dot print out in servlet 5. In servlet 5 let us say, because servlet 5 is our starting servlet now, right? So let us take it that way. Let's break it up. So here we have read everything. So whatever we have read, let us print that up. Out dot print out, let us say, let me call it as, okay, let me call this welcome. So it is user first, and then what we're going to do is let us create a braces and just say ID is some ID field here, and then we have something called email, right? So let us give that email part here. Right, email part, right? So that's what we have done. We're just showing something, whatever we have received, we're showing it out, right? So that is the first part we have done. Now, perfect. Let us first see whether till this part is working, and then we'll move on to the next one, right? Now, let me just start this server now. Let me bring this. Now, it will be republished. Perfect. Now, we'll just go back to this and just say page 3. .html. Right, perfect. We have a name, ID, and email. Let me give some name. Right, let us say ID is some 234, right, and email is something at something.com. Something, right? Now click on go. Now you can see welcome. This is a username, and it has an ID and an email. Perfect. Right? And you can see that everything is being sent from the query string. Okay. So that is what we have. Now let's go back. This time what we want to do here is we don't want to send each and every data as a string. Right? Instead what we'll be doing here is we want to package everything, and then we want to set it as a session variable. Now let us see how can we create an object. Now this is again simple, which is, let us create an object of a CTP session object class, which is this class, right, where we have all the things whatever we need, right? Let me call it as lobj some packet, right? Because these are object packet which we are going to set into our session, right? Now let me call it as new. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Now, either you can actually do this part, or either you can actually, or what you can do here is you can create a constructor where it accepts everything. Doesn't matter. Everything is same. Now here just say dot set of username. Let me call it as username here, or I'm sorry, user, right? And you have lobj packet dot set ID as your ID, and you have your packet dot set email as your email. This is what we are doing. So whatever we have received, we have shown it, and we are just actually setting it up, right? So let me just make it a statement. So let us just say, let's just take it as building the packet, right? So here we have built an object, right? And then we have to set it to the session. Let us say setting the packet. Set packet to session URL. So here, so now we have to create a HTTP session. HTTP session we have. Let me call it as session is equal to, we have to get a request dot get session, and we want to get the session If there is no session created in the whole application, I want to create a new session. So this is first time I'm creating that. And then now from this point on it will be same set attribute. Let us say key is, let us say my some variable here, and then object. So object, you can mention here object called object packet. Now this is how you actually set the attribute and give some object, right? Now from this part what we have done is we have created an object and I am setting it out. Now this can be anything, right? This object can be anything, right? So one of the object is creating something and bundling it up and setting into session. That's what we have done, right? And then let's create an anchor element so that we can move on to the next one. Outer printer off. So what we want here is we want an anchor element, close anchor, and just say, just click on go, and here we have href is equal to, so here we'll be giving one next element. Okay, we haven't created next servlet, we'll create that next servlet now. So let me create one more servlet which is HTTP servlet 6. Right, perfect. Now let us give this 6 servlet over here the name, right? We'll see how we can actually read that. Okay. So till this part our job is done to set an object in the session, right? Now once this is done, object is set and you have an option to go to the next servlet, and that's it, right? Now the main thing comes here when we actually come back to 6 again. Now reading packing is again the same thing what we basically used to do, right? Now let's get back to here in 6. Let us see how we can actually read that part, right? Let's say try catch here. Now let us take HTTP session first. HTTP session, which is session is equal to, I want the session from my request, and that should be non-creatable, right? Which is I don't want to create a new one. Now here what you have to do here is because as these things are coming as an object here, right? You should always create an object type here, right? So first let us create an object here and just say LOBJ some packet is equal to, so you have to create LOBJ session dot get attribute, right, of the key. Now here you have to mention the same key here, which is my packet, and you can use any key. I'm just taking one way of saying, right? Now here before reading anything, right, in object types, you should always check whether the object, whatever you are seeing in this is of type whatever you are actually looking into, right? So for that I hope you remember something which we have learned in core Java. We have learned something called instance of, right? We'll be using that. We have something called instance of, right? So we'll use this. So if this is instance of this, right, this, then only we'll move on with reading something, right? Otherwise we'll just skip. That is what we have something called instance of, right? So if it is instance of, perfect. Otherwise what we'll say, let me create response here. Set content type of text and HTML, and then you have print writer out is equal to, you have something called response dot get writer, and let us just say out dot print of insert 6, right, the break here. Now what we'll do here is, so we are checking this. If this is not instance, just say it as invalid object. Right. If this is perfect, now just say if it is perfect, then what we have to do, we have to create an object of this. Let us say this is LOBJ some say this some class is equal to LOBJ packet. Now what is thing what you have to do? You have to typecast this. Just add typecasting in. Now you don't have to do everything like this, right? You can directly create this whole thing over here itself. You can directly typecast this object into this class and hold it in the same class object. You can do that, but that is not a good practice, right? Because we never know what object we are actually trying to get here, right? You can get any garbage object, right? That's why always try to evaluate that and then write up, right? Now here, if it is everything the same, now let us just print the data here. Out dot print of. Now let us say welcome, right? Now here I want to print a user, so I can get user from my class here, right? Which is get, we have something called get username, right? That is my user. And then let me create a space for ID. ID is my, so I can get it from my class dot get ID, right? In the same way you can get your email, something. And it is a class dot get email, right? Because it will automatically set everything as such, right? And close it up. That's what we are going to print, right? We just said in servlet 6 and whatever we have got as an instance, we're just saying yes, I'm reading the whole packet here and I'm printing it out, right? That's what we're doing. So finally, just close out. Out dot close. Right? That's what we're doing here. Now this is how you actually read something, some object, right? And map it into things whatever you need, right? Let's go back and work it on it. Now let me rebuild this part first and start the server. Go back to page 3 maybe. You have a name, let me give some name here. Let me give some ID and email something what something.com. Click on go. Right? Now you can see this is the first servlet, which is servlet 5. We said welcome, we have a name, ID and email, right? And set building packet, setting the packet session and click on go. When I click on go, it will go to next session. Now you can see building packet is something which you have built on an object. Click on go here. Now you can see the whole object is sent to the next servlet, which is servlet 6, and you can see that yeah, there is something which is happening here, right? So this is how you can actually read an object across the things, which is this, right? So that is how you can actually read. Now let us see whether it persists to the next servlet or not, right? Because this object is again something which is saved in our session, right? So which means if you are saving something in session, it should persist across the servlets. Now let me just take the same code. Let me close this class now. I hope we are done with this class. Now let me just put it fine. Now here whatever we are doing here, reading the part, right? You should get the same thing over here. There shouldn't be any gaps, right? So I'm in servlet 7 here. So servlet 7, and we are going to read the same thing over here. Let's go back and build this and see what happens. And in my servlet 6, I have to build an anchor element. Build an anchor element so that we can move to servlet 7. So here, let me take it as servlet 7, and let's say go to serve 7. Something like that. So let me save all and clean this up. Okay. Restart this and go back here. You have your pitch 3. Right. Take any name here, any ID here, any email here, anything. Right? And these are your details, and click on go. Now you are in first servlet, which is STV5. You have built all the packet you want, right? Click on go. Now you can see we are in HTTP servlet 6 where you have shown everything. Now when I click on 7, you can see the same thing. You're in 7 servlet and you can see everything being persisted messages, right? So this is how you can actually process the data across all the sessions. Now, one last thing here. Now let us say in HTTP session 6, if you want to change anything and send it again, right, it can happen, right, which is like this. Now here what we have done is we have read the packet and everything is fine. Now let us say we want to change something. Now how can you do that? Now let us say in the same packet, let me just create this packet outside, just to, let us say this is null, right, and I'm assigning this object over here, right? If it is a packet of that, I'm running. What I'll do here is I'll just say my class dot, let us say set email, maybe, right? Set email is whatever I'm giving. I don't want to persist. I'll just say xyz at maybe gmail.com, something. I'm just giving something, right? And I've created, I'm editing some value over here, right? So whenever you edit something in object, you have to reset this back again to session, right? So what we can do here, we can directly say hello teacher session dot set attribute of same thing. We have to use the same key over here and then put on your object over here. That's it. So it will be changed across. So when we go to the 7 servlet and whenever we try to read the email part, right? So we'll be getting the new email, right? That's what happens. Now let's go back and see. So this is same even with your string, textual one, which you have seen on servlet 1 and 2, right? So it's the same. If you want to reset anything, just take the same name and give the new name, right? That's it. Let me rebuild this. Okay. Servers, restart, and then go back here to my page. See here, right? Give some name, John, some ID, right? Some email. Let us say some email is some tree at something.com. Some email, right? Click on go here. Now we are in a 5th servlet, right? So we read all the code string and create packet. Click on here. Now you can see in 6 servlet everything is same. When I click on 7, now you can see everything we got the complete object and also the edited one. Whatever we edited in our servlet 6, right? It got persisted in our servlet 7, right? So that is what.
Srinath, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, Sunita.
Is there any way I set up the session data but want to make it read only where nobody else should be able to change it later?
You can't, I mean, nobody else in the sense, what does it mean? Because you are coding something, right? Because
so something like there is some application level, application wide data which I read from the database in the beginning and then I set it in a session, but then I don't want anybody to. It's basically a frequently used element from the database which I don't want to go to the database every time, so I get it and I store it in the
Okay. Actually, you can't make it any read only, but let me check that. Okay, even I haven't gone through that. Let me check that. Okay. So I'll cross check and maybe I'll give.
In lines, can I make it thread safe? Basically, when I'm trying to change some session variable, I don't want anybody else to change at the same time. So it is like in terms of thread safety, can I
do that? Okay, you want to apply some logic? Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Yep, okay. You can do that. So that okay, if you want to, yeah, you can do that. So what you are saying is you want to write the set attribute method as a separate method where you just want to set it. You don't want to, you want to set it once and you want to log the object, right?
Yes.
Yes, you can do that. By writing in logic you can do that. But I don't know, I don't even know, but I think there is no method which you can actually make it read only. But yes, you can actually write a separate class where you can actually lock your object and make it a thread safe. Yes, you can do that. Perfect.
Okay, other than session data, do we have any other type where I remember in .NET somewhere we have that application variables?
Yeah. No, you have in .NET.
We have.
Yes, you have application variables for something called which is a state view, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, view state. right? So those application variables is only till you actually are in same page, right? So maybe for that.
No, I don't mean them. Actually, I don't know whether I'm using the right word or not. But see, basically these are one level above the session variables, where they are kind of web server specific. Like suppose say when until the web server completely shuts off, those will be in scope. Is there anything like that? It's nothing to do with
we have a cookie here, right? The class cookie.
Cookie is again client specific, right? So here,
okay, you want to create something in server,
which are not session specific, which are at a web server, like when the application starts, they come into scope.
Then I hope you have to keep them.
The application completely is like whether web server is off or the application restarts. Until then, they will be in scope.
Yes. Then maybe like yeah, you can go for servlet context. Yes, you can do that. You can go for servlet context, right? So in your servlet context, you have something called set attribute, which we have already seen that, which is servlet context. Let us say I'm creating some servlet context, which is set servlet context. This is used to actually read some data from context variables in my web.xml, or you can also do something called set attribute, right? You can also do that. So this will stay until you kill this, right?
Okay.
You can use servlet context as such. Right. Fine. Okay, I hope you guys understood what Sunita was asking, right? Any doubts in that, guys? No? Okay, perfect. So, yeah. So if you want to create some variables which can stay until the server is killed, right? So we can do that using our servlet context things, right? Until your servlet is up, until your web container is up, the servlet context will be alive until you remove that servlet context, right? Till that part it will be alive, and you can use that across anything. And also you can also make the servlet context and maybe your session complete read only by creating a separate logic, right? As we created thread safe elements, right? So that
Srinath, the servlet context, can they hold like very simple flag kind of variable, or can it hold
anything? It can hold
object.
Anything. It can hold an object as such. So this attribute is something you can see it can hold any object. You can give any flag.
Why I'm asking this question in the large enterprise applications where we have all these reference data. For example, a simple example would be the list of countries, list of states where they will be used frequently, but we don't want to get to the database every time.
Exactly. We can use this. Maybe you're talking about some e-commerce site where you want to add something and you want to, until we close the browser, you want to say so you want to make it useful until you shut down the server or close the browser session?
On the server, the best example would be the list of countries, list of states, and list of, for example, the cities, which will be common for all the browsers, all the users. Very often they need that reference data.
Yeah, you can go for this server context. Yeah.
Srinath, I mean, these type of variables are stored in the cache somewhere, right? I don't know the details about it, but
it will be saved in this part. So the servlet context will be saved as the servlet context is exposed to the whole website as such, and it will be saved in web server.
Okay, that's I'm looking for.
And this will stay until you actually shut down your server. This is something when you are setting something, right, which means you are setting something in your web.xml, and this will stay until you actually write. So this web.xml, whenever you start, this complete web.xml will be read by your your web server, and will keep it in cache. The same thing happens.
Maybe you explained, I missed it, but this has to be hard-coded in the web.xml, or is there any way programmatically I set it like in the beginning of the...
No. Yeah, you can actually hard-code, or you don't have to, actually create, see, if you don't have any context param here, right, you can actually create a new context param using the set attribute, right? You can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. There is no problem in that. Yeah.
Just that we will not be able to look at them physical like in the web.xml, but we will have them. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't have it here, but we will create it here as a virtual thing. It will start. Whenever you create, it will be in an active state, and whenever you shut down, it will go on. Right? That's what happens.
Okay.
And we also have something called remove. Whenever you don't want, you can remove that. But you also have all the things, right? And this servlet context should stay till the application end. You can just try out this one, Sunita. If there is anything, just let me know, and I will also find out if there is anything in that session, right? I'll find out that. It's a good question, right? I'll do
Okay, thank you. Bye.
that. Okay. Fine then. So any other questions, guys? Okay, fine then. So this will be
maybe in the next class. But I have another question, Srinath, related to the session data. Is there any risk with maintaining the session data? So, for example, like everybody starts using it, and are there any known memory issues with this kind of usage?
Yes.
Is there any limitation?
I mean, limitation in the sense you should always see. The first thing is, as a session is being saved in a web server, right? There is no much, because this will be as secure as you are actually providing firewall to your web server. If your firewall is so good enough that if you are, see, whatever sessions you are creating, right, that's why I always try to create a sessions in a form of objects. See, this is a simple firewall you are creating. This is a type of firewall, right? If you are actually getting any unknown object, if you try to read, maybe that unknown object is something which is a hacking object. It can happen, right? So whenever you try to read something, we can actually get what parameter you are reading, and I can get that parameter value, so that next time whenever you browse, right, maybe I can hack that object. It can happen. So it all depends on how. The first thing is, if your web server is exposed to the very good firewall, right, then all the sessions will be protected. But mostly what people will do is, whenever we are actually saving the session, right, I mean, we directly save the session. Otherwise, whenever we save this object, you should always encrypt this object and save. Right, this part. Whenever you're saving, where is that? This part of saving this, right? You should actually use some encryption key type, right? And then you should save the attribute, so that even anyone want to see, they can't see that. They have to decrypt, and for decrypting something, they want a key. Until unless they have a key, they can't decrypt this. Right? But yes, formally speaking, if your Tomcat is, if your web service is good enough, if your web server have good enough firewall, you don't need more of securing this. But if you are talking about internal to your application, then you have to take care of those things, right? Because internal, obviously everyone will be knowing what SSL they are using, right? And they know how to break it up, right? Then you have to use that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Fine. Fine then. You can just get me more questions. If you don't get answer right, you can just email me. I'll find out the answer, right? No issue.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Then let me